presentations that I've seen here, and I've received far more from this class than I've given, but I have thoroughly enjoyed it so much. As we read the chapter on faith, we did see the faith exhibited by many of the people there. And one of the last ones there that was read was Rahab the harlot. And each one was detailed about the faith that they did exhibit. One of the first ones was Abraham. God made Abraham a promise many, many years ago, even before all this started. And what was the promise that he did make Abraham?
To be the father of all nations.
Right. He would have more descendants than all the grains of sand on any of the beaches of the world. Then he had, at a very old age, a son, Isaac. And of course, one of the highlights of this is Isaac was sacrificed, or was prepared to be sacrificed by Abraham. But this was not God's plan. And what took place on that miraculous day that did save Isaac from being offered as a sacrifice? He was prepared to a ram appeared, right?
God provided a lamb.
And this ram was really the sacrifice that was made. But after this took place, and Jacob, of course, was the son of Jacob and Esau. But then one of the next one was Joseph. Joseph took an unlikely voyage to be chosen by God, but he was a real favorite of his dad, Jacob. But the brothers were very jealous of Joseph. And what happened to Joseph there? Remember what took place in the life
Sold
of Joseph?
into slavery. Yeah.
Right. He was sold into slavery, and
Then he went into, he was in Egypt and was able to interpret dreams.
right.
And the Pharaoh really relied on him, and he was, I think at this time that one of his dreams, I can't remember what the name since it was, but I do know that Joseph said that there is going to be a terrible drought, famine, and it's, I think, last 7 or 8 years, and so you prepare for it in advance. So he did that.
This was God's way of preparing what would eventually happen. One of the first dreams that he had was he saw the trees bowing down before him. And the brothers were very, very irked at this. They thought that this was a sign that he was a favorite of his father. And of course, the next thing they wanted to do was to get rid of him. Of course, he had a fat coat that had been given. I saw this presentation that the church did have, the amazing Technicolor coat, and that was so well done here. But the coat, what did the brothers do with the coat?
They put blood on it.
Right.
And said that Joseph had been killed.
Right. Well done, Ann. After this coat was found and returned to his father, of course he was heartbroken. He thought that this was probably the last that he would ever see of his son. But God did have some more plans. And after he was sold into slavery, as Charlotte did so well discuss a while ago, he was able to interpret those dreams. But before that, he was in the prison, a prison there. And the word got to Pharaoh that he could interpret these dreams. And of course, he was very reluctant to be called because of the fact that he was in there almost 2 years. But finally he was called, and he did give the proclamation about this famine that Charlotte just mentioned that would be coming. And as a result of this coming of the famine, he did make provisions. And what provisions did he make that really well tended for the financial welfare of Egypt?
He stored the grain for 7 years, and they had a drought, and so that saved the land of Egypt.
Right, he stockpiled it so much, and really, but then as the famine did come, in his homeland, and the brothers were driven by hunger to find something. And as they did approach the land where Joseph was, and as he did approach him, Joseph recognized him. He knew the situation, but they did not really know the situation really. But as the famine did, and he was selling them grain to take back to their homeland. But as they did take this grain back, he would inadvertently leave the money, or probably purposely leave the money in the bags so that they could come back and show that he did have a loving heart. He loved them very much. His younger brother was one that they had at one time said, we'll leave the younger brother here as sort of a hostage as we go back and take these things. And the king of Egypt saw that he was an uncanny person, that he did have a great amount of prophetic ability because of God's ordaining him with him. And as he did make these things, and as he did, this was a good time for Egypt. They fared financially well for those years. But as the time went along, and as the famine was over, then a new king came into Egypt, and he really did not know Joseph. Times turned for the people of Israel. The king saw that they were outnumbering his people so vastly by a large amount, that he decided to do what with all those people?
Make them slaves.
Made them slaves. And there were many, many of them. The slavery conditions were very brutal. I mentioned all these things as a backdrop to what Moses did. He was called to lead them out. And he did through all those many miracles that God did ordain him with. He led them out through that. And as the miracles did come forth, does anyone remember any of those miracles and what took place there? And starting the hardened heart of Pharaoh prevented them from being carried through. But what took place on those many miracles? Anyone remember any of the miracles?
Different plagues and outbreaks of pests and destroyed everything in Egypt, basically.
Yes, it was. There were frogs. And the last and most brutal of the verdicts that he did have was the firstborn of each family was to be killed. Not only the humans, but also the animals. So the firstborn was to be taken, and of course, the word was given to the Passover. And what was the significance of the Passover there? We still celebrate the Passover.
If there was blood on the door,
Mm-hmm.
that means that they would not go into that home.
Right. Anyway, Moses did lead them so much out of this into the promised land of Canaan. You remember God had given Moses the verdict that they would certainly go into this promised land. And God did not let Moses do that. There was a reason why that he did not. Does anyone remember why Moses was not allowed to lead them in and his successor was there?
Basically because he'd gotten angry.
Right.
His temper.
He did have a temper, and one of the things that God had told him to do there was to, of course, the tablets were written, but another important thing that was very important was the water. They were desperate for water, the children of Israel. They were grumbling. They were very much against the faith that was bestowing upon Moses. But they cried out for water. And as they did cry out for water, God did face to face tell Moses what to do. Remember what he told him to do?
Get the rock.
Strike the rock.
Strike the rock.
Mhm. One of the things in there, I was trying to figure out exactly what this was. But Moses did right, and God was displeased with his actions on this. One of the things he told him there, and I'm trying to find that here, that you have not presented the wonderful ways that he would prepare to the people, and he was displeased with Moses' reaction to this. And so as a result, he told him that he could go up the Mount Pisgah and see the land, but he could not cross over.
But, excuse me, what was it? I never figured, what did Moses do that was not right? God,
I'm
what
only
was
trying
he
to find.
supposed to do?
I'm exactly trying to find that.
I heard that, and I know it's the wells of Manissa or whatever it is. but
Yeah,
I
they're
never
right.
have-
These are the wells of rebellion. God thought that they had rebelled against his.
But I never did quite figure out exactly what did Moses
Let me
do.
see if I can find that.
Exodus 17, is that?
Yeah, it's in Exodus, and also it's in Joshua here somewhere. Wait, here it is. It's right. It is in Exodus. Okay, you're right. Here it is, right here. But the Lord said to Moses.
Excuse me, Jim, can you tell us where that is?
Yeah, it's in Numbers, Numbers 21, 11. Then Moses lifted the rod and struck the rock twice, and water gushed out, and the people and the cattle drank. But the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, because you did not believe me and did not sanctify me in the eyes of the people of Israel, you shall not bring them into the land that I have promised.
So what did God want him to do? People
Wanted
cried
to
out
be
for
more of a
water.
witness in his supernatural
What
way.
was he supposed to do that would please God?
That's-
People cried out for water, and was he supposed to what?
I think that he was supposed to give to God would provide for them and make that issue to them, and God did not think he did that well enough. I think
He more or less took the credit for
Right.
himself without making it clear that it was God.
So he
That's
wanted,
exactly
God
right.
wanted him to wait and let God provide the water
Mhm.
in due time.
I think that's right. Anyway,
It says
because
here on 28, it says, take the staff and you and your brother gather the assembly together, speak so that the rock before you and their eyes will pour forth water. You will bring water out of the rock for the community so they will, and their livestock can drink. So he was just supposed to say the word rather than, I guess, hit the rock.
I think so.
Oh.
That's the first time I've read it that
I never
way.
have really put those pieces together.
Yeah, I didn't
I think
either.
that's true.
He was supposed to just,
Say,
Rely on God's
just like
promise.
he did at the parting of the Red Sea, stand by and let the God show you or help you. He didn't do it that way
well,
then.
that's a big lesson, because we always want to help.
In Exodus 17, 6, it says, and Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel, and he called the name of the place Massah and Meribah because of the fault finding of the children of Israel, and because they put the Lord to the proof by saying, is the Lord among us or not? So maybe they were accusing Moses of lack of faith.
I think so. I called in and asked that
That's a
to
good
the
question.
KHCB. They have a question and answer program that comes on Thursday night. It's a fellow named Clubney, he's a pastor, and I asked him that particular question. And he said that it was basically what Laura had said a while ago, that God's, the provision that God would make for them. I did not know the exact reason. I thought it was related to the tablets of vision, but I think she's explained it very well. Joshua then was ordained by God to bring them into this land. Joshua has so many things that are really what he did there. And one of the things, he did so many miraculous things. We're going to read some things here. One of the things he did tell the people is, be strong and of good courage. Be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed, for the Lord thy God is with thee whithersoever thou goest. I was going to ask Laura to read those words. These were the instructions that God did give to Joshua. Remember, he has been ordained to lead them now that Moses has been denied that privilege.
Okay, this is from chapter 1 in Joshua. Now after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, it came to pass that the Lord spoke to Joshua the son of Nun, Moses' minister, saying, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore arise and go this Jordan, thou and all the people, unto the land which I do give them, even to the children of Israel. Every place that the sole of your foot shall tread upon, that have I given unto you, as I said unto Moses. There shall not any man be able to stand before thee all the days of thy life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with thee. I will not fail thee nor forsake thee. Be strong and of good courage, for unto this people shalt thou divide for the inheritance the land which I swore unto their fathers to give them. This book of the law shall not depart out of thy mouth, but thou shalt meditate thereon day and night, and thou mayest observe to do according to all that is written therein. For they shall make thy way prosperous, and then thou shalt have good success. Have not I commanded thee? Be strong and of good courage, be not afraid, neither thou be dismayed, for the Lord thy God is with thee wherever you go.
This last verse that Laura just read is one that is supposed to be our model for courage in spite of when we have trouble, have trials of all types. And things were going well for Joshua. He captured many territories, and there was one little province that did not go with him. It's a little country called Ai. This was one that God attempted told him to conquer and to bring them into his cause. And the children of Israel had a real problem there. They could not subdue this country. Joshua sent in 3,000 troops to get this small group. It was supposed to be just an easy cakewalk of a deal. But they were met with unsuspecting rebellion, resistance. People of Ai resisted, and they chased Joshua's army backward. This was the only time that he did have a lot of trouble conquering these lands. But as they did, they killed a lot of Joshua's people, and Joshua did not know exactly why this was happening. So he asked God about it. Why was this happening? And God did tell him the answer. There is a hidden sin that is taking place. And there was one person named Achan. He had been stealing things from the storehouse of the people, and he had been appropriating things for himself. And hidden sin was what he was involved with. People did not know that he was doing this. So God did tell him exactly what happened. And he did contact Achan and did find out exactly what it was. And he admitted he had been stealing things from that. So he was put to death. And they did go from there to conquer many lands. Joshua continued this for a long time, died at 110 years old after a very successful career of leading God's cause. And one of the things that he did tell the people right at the end of his life here is you can't worship the Lord God we can't worship the Lord God, for he is holy and jealous. He will not forgive your rebellions and sins. If you forsake him and worship other gods, he will turn upon you and destroy you, even though he has taken care of you for such a long time. And one of the things that he mentioned there is, choose you this day whom you will serve, God or Mammon. And the people did reply with exactly what he said. He said, we choose the Lord. And then Joshua did tell him, you have heard yourself say it. You have chosen to obey the Lord. And Joshua at that time, right at the end of his life, made a covenant with them that they would follow. Of course, they were very rebellious people. They did not always follow him. But this was in several other instances that were taking place during God's care of him. And I asked somebody to read those verses, and let's see, I asked Joe to read one. Do you have that one, Joe?
I don't have it, unless you'll tell me, I'll read it. What?
Okay, I think it was about the time, let's see if I can find it in here. Joshua was crossing Before that though, let me mention this. Moses, before this time had happened, had sent 12 spies into the land of Canaan to find out exactly if they could be conquered. And 2 of those spies that he sent were Caleb and Joshua. There were 12 tribes, one from each tribe. But as they went into this land to find out, they came back with a report. The land of Canaan is full of people of various types. But what was their report that they came back with Moses to there?
He said, these people are they're huge people.
Right.
We will never be able to conquer them.
That's exactly right.
Came back.
No.
10 of them came back with us.
She said that was, they could do it.
Joshua and Caleb were the ones that came a positive report there. And they did, as we say, the people rebelled at that time. They sided with those 10 that did go in. And as they did rebel, God did punish them for this. Remember what God's punishment was because of their lack of faith in what God had wanted them to do? What was their punishment? He sent them wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. And as they wandered a very short distance for 40 years there, and time came, they were a very rebellious time. And this was at the time that God saw that Joshua was the man to do it. Joshua did lead them from then on. And one of the things about Joshua here that was really important was at one time when they were being chased. This was the verse that I would cut and I can't remember exactly what it was, but they were being chased. God did stop the waters from flowing after they had crossed, just as he did the Red Sea. Stopped the waters from flowing. They crossed over at that time, and then, of course, that time they were able. This was one of the miracles that God did use for Joshua as he was going. I think these are the verses that.
Yeah, I'm sorry I misplaced that.
That's all right. And also, Diane, I asked you to read another instance there.
Yes. We're going to Joshua 6, 2 through 10. And then after that, I'll be reading verse 20 through 21. 6, verses 2 through 10. And after I finish that, I'll go to verse 20 and 21. Okay. Then the Lord said to Joshua, "See, I have delivered Jericho into your hands, along with its king and its fighting men. March around the city once with all the armed men. Do this for 6 days. Have 7 priests carry trumpets of ram's horns in front of the ark. On the 7th day, march around the city 7 times with the priests blowing the trumpets. Then you hear them sound a long blast on the trumpets. Have all the people give a loud shout. Then the wall of the city will collapse, and the people will go up, every man straight in." So Joshua, son of Nun, called the priests and said to them, "Take up the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and have 7 priests carry trumpets in front of it." Then he ordered the people, "Advance, march around the city, with the armed guard going ahead of the ark of the Lord." Then Joshua had spoken to the people. The 7 priests carrying the 7 trumpets before the Lord went forward, blowing their trumpets, and the ark of the Lord's covenant followed them. The armed guard marched ahead of the priests who blew the trumpets, and the rear guard followed the ark. All this time the trumpets were sounding, but Joshua had commanded the people, "Do not give a war cry. Do not raise your voices. Do not say a word until the day I tell you to shout. Then shout." So he had the ark of the Lord carried around the city, circling it once. Then the people returned to camp and spent the night there.
Thank you, Diane. This is another instance in which a very unlikely way that God did provide for the people of Israel, the way that they did march around the city. One of the things that I was going to ask you, and I read this guidepost several years ago, and this is the question it asks: could it be that Jesus is still opening the scriptures to us individually now as we face specific problems in our lives? Do you think that he does?
Yep.
Can you have you given instance in which you have seen that happen? I know you can, Mark. I can
Be
think
strong and be courageous. That's been the theme for the last 24 to 36 hours.
Yes.
Because I was really battling some faith and doubt this week. But yesterday I went to the Friendswood Community Prayer Breakfast, which I haven't been to in a while. That's where I met that Islam couple. But I met some of my friends there, and they prayed with me. And after that, it's been like, I'm still with you. Hang in there.
Well said.
And sometimes it's very hard to see it because we get in pity parties and other things, but there's just,
It's a good example.
been an interesting 36 hours.
Can you one relay another instance in which you've seen God's providential care come into your hand? I could think of so many verses that have come to so many times. One of the things we lack decision. We can't make a decision on something. We don't know what to do. God has given us many things. If any man lacks wisdom, let him ask of the Father, who upbraideth not and supplieth each man according to his needs. It comes from the book of James. And then there's another one that really goes along with this. Thou shalt guide me by thy counsel, and afterward receive me into glory. This is another instance that God would give us the decision. So many times we really don't know the answer, and God will give us, I think, those answers by insight. Christianity is really not a creed to be excited, but it's a power to be tapped. One of the other things that mentioned here is when we are wondering just exactly if we are able to do something, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, coming from Philippians 4. Another one there is such an important chapter in the Bible is Philippians. My God shall supply all your needs according to his riches which are in glory. I think that's evident when we have certain needs in our life. And then in Philippians 1:6, there's really a good one. Being confident of this one thing, that God who begun a good work in you will complete it. Sometimes we're into something, we're maybe into more than we can handle. But God sometimes will step in there. And sometimes when we're troubled with something, and that happens to us many times, there's verses from God that are, cast thy burden upon the Lord, and he will sustain thee. He will never suffer the righteous to be moved. I think that comes from Psalm 55. There are many other instances like that God does. Another one was humble thyself under the mighty hand of God so that he can exalt you in due time. I'm not sure exactly where that one comes from. I think it's
1 Peter 5:6.
right.
I read it this morning.
Casting all your care. I think he ends up casting all your care or careth from you.
How about do not be anxious for anything?
Be careful for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication, let your request be known to God. That was one that
With
is an
thanksgiving.
inspiration. With thanksgiving, you're right.
That's the part I always leave out sometimes.
That's right. Thanking God for the problem. And so many times that God just can't come to our help. And I think that they mentioned in this article, and God told so many others like this. One of them is when we're going through a troubled time, weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning.
James, I want to mention one thing I feel compelled to say is during the hurricane in 2008, I was homeless. I had to have my whole house gutted, and I had to live somewhere else. And of course, I lived by myself, and I'll never forget talking to insurance adjusters, and they'd say, well, get your husband to help you. I said, I don't have a husband. Well, get your children. I said, I don't have any children. And, you know, I was really all alone, but a Jewish couple came to my aid, and I lived in their house as my home was getting fixed. And I remember one time, and I don't know anything about fixing a house or anything. I had to make a lot of decisions. And in Sunday school, one time, this one guy said, if you have any trouble with your insurance adjusters, you just tell them you're gonna go to the Texas Board of Insurance. And so, he said that, and then weeks later, I was on the phone with an insurance adjuster who did not want to pay this extra amount. And that statement came in my brain, just popped in there. God gave it to me, and it was sitting there waiting. And I said, well, I'll just have to go to the Texas Board of Insurance. And I got whatever I wanted from him, and as a result, I have a brand new house, and I have things in that home that I never would have been able to have. New carpet, tile, I have a stainless steel kitchen. I would have never, ever been able to afford anything like that.
It's the silver lining.
And
The tragedy.
I am very grateful when I get up and I look at this, and I know that God's provision provided that for me. And every day I'm very grateful for that.
But when you're going through that moment, it's very, very
It's for
traumatic.
4 months. And
Right.
there's a verse, and I don't know where it is, that God will give something exceedingly abundantly above what you think or ask.
Yes.
And that verse comes to mind sometimes too, because that's what he did for me. And
That's true.
it was an amazing, amazing year.
When are we going over to your house?
Is this an invitation?
Anyway, it's
That's a
always
good-
been a testimony.
It is a
what
great
God
testimony.
can provide when you're all alone, because I didn't have family.